So, welcome to my Jam on It podcast, Kevin.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, and to make you extra special, you are my last interview for 2021.
Oh, cool. All
Yeah,
right. So end of the year. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It's December now.
exactly. Yeah, and also I think people are too busy during the holidays, so I was like, you know what, let's just wrap it up, just like Spotify already did their wrap. So yeah.
Everybody was putting out their rap today. I feel like, even people who don't fundamentally agree with the politics of Spotify and how they pay out artists, everybody still wants to post their top 5 bands that they listened to this year, or, how many plays their music got or anything like that. And you know what? I think off and on, I felt like I don't need to see everybody's top artists, but this year it's actually been kind of fun.
Yeah, especially that we've been in a pandemic for over a year. But speaking of which, what is your top 5?
Oh, here I'll pull it up. I saved it because because you want to send it to your friends.
Yeah.
Okay, so top 5 artists were Muna, Japanese Breakfast, Bon Iver, The War on Drugs, and The National. Which I feel like I made a joke earlier today that generally it's number one is going to be a band that I just listen to the same record like over and over and over again, and then somewhere Bon Iver is going to be in there. So I hit my normal year end situation. I listened to Saves the World by Muna probably more than any other record this year. I also listen to a lot of vinyl, so I feel like I'm a little bit less on Spotify. But yeah, Japanese Breakfast and Mona, that makes perfect sense to me. And then yeah, Bon Iver will end up being in one of these 5 spots from year to year. He's just Justin Burton's just like my all-time like favorite artist. So
I love Muna and they're fantastic live. So here's my
hmm
top 5. And I'm really surprised that I've been listening for over 7,000 minutes. But number 1, I have Gary Newman, 2
nice.
Cannons, 3 Bishop Briggs, 4 Fits in the Tantrums, and 5 The Killers.
That's cool. I love the Killers. I like the Gary Newman is the top. That works. I see that. That's very cool. That's a great list.
Yeah, well, I just did an album review on his last new record. So I kept
Sure.
listening to it just because I could, write about it. So I was like, that's probably the main reason why he's on the top. And if I were to create this like top 5,
Sure.
it probably wouldn't have been those top 5. So I was like really surprised, like, oh, so those are the main people I do listen to.
Nice. I think I feel like the Killers are getting a lot of love recently. I feel like there was a kind of like a brief period of time, maybe, after the early aughts when they were really big, where I feel like at least my friends and the people that I spend time with were not like super big on it. And then I don't know, maybe like I don't know, maybe like 2, 3 years ago, everyone was suddenly just like, you know what? To hell with it. The Killers are great. They've always been great. I think it's an unpopular opinion that the Killers, kind of surpassed the Strokes. I'm a big fan of the Strokes, but I think it's probably true in terms of popularity that they really, I think they crested the wave a lot higher than the Strokes did. Although I did really love the new Strokes album, so
Oh
I
yeah.
can't
That's
can't
another
can't
album
complain.
I did a review on. Yeah, no, that was great. I felt the same way with Coldplay. Like when they came out, I was like,
Sure.
eh. And then like their new stuff, even if the new song with BTS, I'm like, that's a bop.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and you get BTS on something, it's gonna be fun.
Recently, obviously, Thanksgiving just passed. What's your favorite food item?
Actually, what's really funny is had Thanksgiving dinner, and then I traveled out to do Thanksgiving, and then I came back, and then what I went and got that evening was Popeyes chicken. Because which I never eat. I mean, I probably haven't had Popeyes chicken in like 5 or 6 years, but it just was like I didn't want to cook. I didn't really want to buy anything expensive, and there's one just like a few blocks away from me, so I just walked up and got that. So weirdly, this year my favorite thing that I got was just like Popeye spicy recipe. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff. I ate hot pot for Thanksgiving this year, and it was just a great It was a great Thanksgiving, but Popeye's chicken, a nice to be reminded that number one, it's way better than KFC, and number two, it's just I see that you disagree with me on that statement. You can cut that out of the broadcast later. Uh,
Yeah, oh my gosh. No, the year before, I went to KFC for Thanksgiving.
oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And me and my friend, we both love KFC over Popeyes. But you know what? I will give Popeyes this. They make really great apple like turnovers, like that, like apple
Oh yeah.
dessert. That's bomb.
Mm, mm. You know what? And yeah, that's really Thanksgiving themed, so you can't lose with that.
There you go. Yeah, good thing. I'm like, you know what? This interview's over. You said Popeyes is better.
Yeah, 10 minutes and we're out. I promoted Popeyes over. When you
There
cut
you
this
go.
down, this is going to be the section that disappears immediately. You're like, you want people to like me, I guess. But
Well, yeah, well, like sponsored by Popeyes.
sure, right? No one can see that I'm wearing a Popeyes t-shirt right now.
Yeah, no, I used to watch Conan a lot, and he made a joke because Popeyes did that spicy chicken sandwich that was like a total phenomenon. Like everyone was raving about it.
Sure, sure.
And so was KFC. So it was like Popeyes competing with KFC. And so Conan's joke was like, and America, what's your decision or something like that? And then the vote goes to heart disease. And it's just like cracking up. Okay, so this is cheesy, but what are you thankful for?
Honestly, New York City, like Brooklyn music scene has been really good. And here especially where things haven't been so bad with Delta variant, and people mask up and like people are really respectful. We've just been able to have a really great music scene over the summer and even here through the early fall. Just it kind of kicked off maybe in late May, like middle of June, as soon as vaccinations were available to people who are in their 20s and 30s here in New York. It suddenly shows were happening everywhere, and the venues that did survive, the bars and venues that were able to make it through, there were people at every single show. Like my band Endearments played, I think in July or mid-June, and it was sold out immediately. Just everyone wanted to be at every show. And I thought that was going to kind of tamp down a little bit after months of people going to shows again, because like the days of being like, hey, like come out and see the bands or whatever, people will be like, oh yeah, I'll be there, but they're not really going to be there. That's just not how it is right now. Everybody's going to everything all the time, and I think the scene here is kind of contracted a little bit. So there are still so many bands in Brooklyn, but there are less than there were prior to the pandemic. And so I feel like there's a very much like a community vibe to Brooklyn and Bushwick music scene, especially right now. So I've been really thankful for that. That's been probably one of the nicest post vaccines thing that has happened in New York, is that the music scene has really like come back full force. So lots of great music. If you're keeping your ear to the ground for Brooklyn music, there's some incredible stuff coming out right now.
That's what I was going to ask. That was one of my questions, was because like mainly I listen to a lot of music. I'm from California. So
Sure.
I'm like listening to music a lot from LA or like, from the UK. And then I'm seeing like this growing music scene in Brooklyn. I was like, wait a minute, what is New York doing that's like really like pushing that force? So you're saying that, because of the pandemic, we're like in lockdown, and then all of a sudden we're getting vaccinated, live music is coming, and it's just this push of like new music then?
Yeah, and I think it's sort of interesting, right? There, sort of historically, post 9/11, there was this huge surge in music that happened, right? That is the era of the Strokes. That's the era of Yeah Yeah Yeahs. That's all of these bands that sort of existed before 9/11. There was just this like this thing that happened where everyone just was suddenly so hungry for music and sort of had this attitude of just like, if we're going to do, we got to do it now. Like, this is our opportunity. Like, this is the moment.
What's interesting too is that So good music happens after like a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Art comes like crashing in to help, I think, tell people stories, help people to, you know, and I mean, so many people just completely cooped up for a really long time. So we weren't really getting much music at all, right? Like I remember that, like so many postponed records. That Japanese breakfast record was postponed for months and months and months and months. And so there was just like a trickle, like barely anything happening. And then so many of the like online music publications, they lost staff, like a lot of the writers and people who were really covering things for smaller blogs and stuff like that kind of disappeared.
Speaking of how I heard your project Endearments, I got an email from Taylor, and I'm always surprised of like how many like publicists have me emails, because like how the hell did I get my email? But it's honestly, I'm thankful for that, because that's a way I discover new music. And so anyway, I'm like, okay, like before I even read your bio, I'm like, let me listen to the music. And I'm a total synth junkie. Like I love synth pop. I'm wearing a New Order hoodie.
Hell yeah.
But so I was like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. This is really good. Now,
thank you.
You're welcome. I'm like, okay, now who is this guy? Right. So I'm reading, and you were part of St. Maryland. I was like, no freaking way. I love St. Maryland. And
oh, nice.
I actually did an EP review on Tangle for another college radio station, and the article is still up under archives.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I found out, Kevin from Endearments is also from St. Maryland, I was like, okay, I gotta interview him. I was just like, this is a total like full circle moment.
Oh, that makes me really happy. Yeah, St. Maryland was a great band, and I loved that Tangle EP. It was like that was a record that had some big yes influence. And Shay, who sang on that, is an amazing singer and a great great musician. And it just was it was a great record. And honestly, it's really fun to hear anybody just be like, hey, that was a good one, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, even some of the earliest songs here for Endearments, there's a song called Left Side that was kind of like came from the tail end of St. Maryland. That was a song that was originally written for St. Maryland, and that like I took over and kind of used as the jumping off point for this. And it's been really cool. Like I've been, it's interesting to kind of do it on my own. It doesn't mean I don't have people that I'm playing with and that I'm collaborating with. Luckily, I still have some really great friends who are still here in Brooklyn doing music, thank goodness, that I'm playing with. And it's just been a really great time so far.
Yeah, so you were in St. Maryland, but you're also in previous projects, Joyce, Fair Vision. So what have you learned about like each project that kind of like help you kind of being the forefront in Endearments?
I'm still playing Joyce, which is awesome. I play bass in that band. That is my friend Megan, who an incredible songwriter, and it's really like lo-fi, sort of like surfy pop. And what's so fun about that actually is that Anjali Nair, who plays guitar in Endearments and is playing guitar on Father of Wands, the Endearments EP, is the guitarist for Joyce as well. So I actually met her through Megan, and Joyce has been great because I think more than any other band that I've played in, it just feels really comfortable to play that music, just really fun and chill, and like everyone just sort of locks in really well. The music is like good pop music that doesn't require that kind of like crazy concentration to make sure that everything is, like exactly where it needs to be. Everybody sort of just sits back into it. And that's what's really fun to play that kind of tune. And it just was the first thing in a while that I played that was really guitar focused, because I'd just been, obviously, St. Maryland, it was all synths. We didn't even have guitars. It was just bass guitar, which is what I played. And then, so yeah, I played in Joyce before Endearments, and it really was nice and kind of reminded me how much I love the guitar after years and years of kind of like leaving that to the side. And then actually Fair Visions is, that's my friend Ryan, and he just put out an EP. It's called, I think, Modern Kids, and it's really awesome, very New Ordery, very like synth poppy pop, like I mean, not even really synth poppy. It's more, I guess, post punk than anything else. That's a great EP, and I started playing with him. He's just a friend of mine. I started playing bass live for them, and that's actually kind of the total opposite. That one I have to really focus in because like we're really tight to what gets played, and really have to be well practiced, really focused, because everything is tight. You know what I mean? Everything in its exact right place. So I kind of have like two ends of the spectrum there. And so what's nice is that Endearments kind of falls right in the middle, right? Like we're still playing, we're still playing to a click track. We're still playing to sequenced parts on synthesizers and stuff like that. But it breathes a little bit more, and that's been nice. Yeah, I think that's kind of like where I'm taking from on the two sides of like other bands that I've been playing in.
And honestly, I wish that your EP was like a lot longer, like a full album, because I was like, wait, now I'm done with the EP, so now I'm just gonna play it on repeat then.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not a very prolific songwriter. I've got to admit that. I just don't write songs quickly. But I do have 5 or 6 songs that I'm working on right now, which I'm very excited that hopefully sometime early next year there will be more music out. But I can never tell. I like to finish things and then kind of let them sit for a little bit and then go back to them, and like kind of spend a little bit more focus on them and go back to them and then go back to them like that, which was fine over the pandemic, right? Because nothing else was going on. So I could write something, then leave it alone for a few months. But I'm feeling like I'm pushing myself a little bit harder to get things done quickly this time. So hopefully I'll have something new to show off next year.
And that's another thing that I love about Endearments is not just the synths, but your songwriting is superb, I have to say.
Oh, thank you.
And my favorite track is Ocean, and I just want to recite your lyrics because I just want someone else to make me feel beautiful when I'm by myself. And I know that you recently came out of a relationship, and so sharing your experience, maybe you could give me some insight on like why it's important to maybe find a healthy relationship, or have a relationship that respects boundaries, or find someone that's like even supportive and but also kind of lets you like be yourself and be alone at times.
It's funny because I do think that actually something that's really important to me is is sort of that alone time, and it's sort of that like space to kind of just like I think find that like I have OCD, like I have clinical OCD, and I'm medicated and things like that for it. But like I do find that it's really easy for me to have like a certain amount of just innate anxiety, right? Like because my brain is just always sort of conjecturing out like possible bad outcomes and other things like that. And so it's funny because I think the as a person, the amount of time I need to sort of just like be quiet and like need to like take some time to like think these through and like decide how I feel about something, right? Is really important to me. And I think it's interesting kind of coming out of a relationship and writing songs about that relationship, especially because interestingly enough, most of the time I write about something, that thing has happened like, a few years earlier, and I've sort of digested it in my brain and like come up with what I really think about it, like how I feel about it. These songs happened like less than 6 months after getting out of a really long-term relationship and came really quickly. So they're far more raw, I think, in content and in thought than most of what I've written. And I think there's something very cathartic about that. But I also feel like when you look at those lyrics, like the lyrics you're talking about, they're just like emotions that are just sort of emotions, right? Like they're not, I don't really go far, I think, on any of these songs and sort of like explaining kind of like any of the context or any of the like what's going on around those songs. They're just big emotions, right? Like just on the page. And then the story about it and like the thinking about it after the fact is where all that narrative and all the tarot card like imagery and all that other stuff sort of gets applied backwards onto it. So it's interesting. I think I might have diverged from the question a long time ago, but That's about as far as I think I'm gonna get on that.
More details the better. And you mentioned how, like, your songwriting is very raw, it's super intimate, like even if the lyrics is like, oh damn. And when I'm listening to the song, when I'm listening to your music, it's almost as if I knew exactly what you went through without really being at the moment. And so that's why I'm saying, like, it's super detailed and stuff. So you're telling me how you did a show, it was sold out, and let's say, you're at a show, you're seeing your fans singing back to you. What's your reaction? Because obviously your fans didn't, share the same experience as you did, but yet maybe somewhat they kind of relate. Like, to me, it's like, do you get weirded out when you see someone like singing the songs back to you when it's your own story?
Sure, that's a really interesting question. I don't know. I think that I think one of the benefits of something that I think is a little bit more like a little bit more emotionally broad is that also this can mean what you want it to mean, and it can be personal to you too, right? Like Ocean specifically is about like watching someone that you're in love with fall in love with someone else. That's like the real, like, that's sort of like the tagline on that song. That's the like elevator pitch for what that song's about. And it's interesting because it is not a song that is very like, woe is me that this is happening. It's really more looking at a situation where you it's like you feel very strongly for someone, you see that person reflecting those same strong feelings that you have for them to someone else, and that sort of parallelism between those two things is where you sort of step back and go, well, I need something that is going to be good for me the way that I need it. Like I want something good for me with someone else where I can receive that like kind of reciprocity of affection. Um, and you do too, right? Like you don't want somebody else to feel like, hey, like this is, I want something, we want different things. It's so it's not that that song is necessarily even, like a condemnation of that thing. It's just really looking at that moment and going, you know, I think when you've been in a relationship for a long time, you see things more pragmatically, right? Like this is not an emotion of like, I'm crushed because this is happening. It's more of an emotion of going like, what is actually good and healthy for two people that are growing apart, right? And you see in all the songs on this album, I think, are just a lot of that. Like, what is good and healthy for two people that are growing apart? What does it mean to have like reasonable boundaries with someone who, I think is looking for more than you can give them, right? What does it mean to know when something is over? Like all of these are the questions that I'm asking, and I think a lot of people have felt that, right? Like, and whether or not getting out of a very short-term relationship or there's just like really intense emotions, or if it's something that's much longer, and I think there's more of those kind of practical feelings about it. There's something in these songs, there's some like emotional core to these songs that I think you can latch onto. So I hope people get excited about it and they want to sing it and they want to be a part of that. But I'm also, I think even when I perform live, I tend to kind of zone it out in a way where I don't really notice what people are doing. So if anybody is really enjoying it, and in other bands that I've been in that were far more popular than this band, I feel like there have only been a few times where I've really been like, wow, everybody's singing these lyrics, but it was usually more like, and I'm forgetting what the lyrics are, so that's embarrassing for me.
Right. And that's when you're like, okay, here's the mic to you.
Sure.
All right. So I just want to make sure you don't get weirded out if I'm like singing Ocean or Delicate or even Annika.
No, go for it. I would be happy. I would be happy. You'll probably remember the lyrics better than me. I'm not notorious to other people, but to myself, I'm notorious for forgetting what the lyrics of the songs are.
If you need someone to do a teleprompter, just think of me.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. Let's make sure you're at every show.
So I mean, obviously, like most of these songs come from like some heartache or, like you mentioned, kind of unrequited love, but essentially they all come from the feeling of being in love. So would you consider yourself a romantic person?
I think so. Yeah, I would say that I consider myself a romantic person. I feel like I'm writing a lot of songs that are. I'm now been in a new relationship for for a little while now, and I feel like I'm writing songs that are far more, I think, like celebrations of what it feels like to like have those kind of like really like kinetic moments with somebody that you're falling in love with, right? And Annika actually is, even though it came out before this record, is one of those songs, and I think that that's really fun. I like a song that's just sort of like, I think it's funny that that one preceded Father Wants, because that one is really about like realizing that two people love each other, but you haven't really said it yet. And I think that that's a really fun theme. And I'm finding more of that. I don't know how many more songs are going to happen that are going to be really sort of focused on that, sort of like on breakup and things like that. But you never know. You know what I mean? When there's a well of things to go to, it's really easy to tap that for lyrical content.
So when it comes to your songwriting process, and do you have the lyrics written out first? Do you have a synth melody in mind, or like, a bass riff that's going on?
Sure, that's a great question. Sort of all of the above, right? Like, so I think now more than ever, I think I am writing out mostly complete songs. But by that, I don't mean that all of the parts are songs, right? It might be a bass riff that I've written for the whole song. I know what the bass is going to do for the whole song. I'm singing over that. I might have written it all out on piano first, and then I'm playing it through, and I've written the lyrics out over the top of that. In many cases, I may have written out like the top lines and the chords and like kind of the structure of the song, but I'm still working through lyrics. The last thing that almost always happens is the composing, like the actual composition, right? And so the synths and all of the like synthesizers and things that happen, that's me composing that. I spend a lot of time working using like a MIDI sequencer, and so I will sequence those synths via MIDI and kind of write and compose those things. And then after that, I'll record some like scratch drums and some bass and some scratch vocals. And that's when kind of at that point is when I start bringing in like collaboration from friends like Anjali, or Will Haywood Smith is a drummer. He's a great drummer in New York. He plays drums in Endearments. And so like, I'll start getting them involved, right? And then we'll be adding things on top of that. And then we might change the compositions after that. But the songs themselves, I think most of the time, yeah, are like, I'll write a bass riff and then I'll start writing lyrics over the top of that, or piano part and write on the top of that. Occasionally there will be a song that is just a really cool like synth riff that turns into a song. And actually the song Empress is one of those, where I wrote these like two parts, the sort of like bell parts at the beginning where it's like bum 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 bum, and then that riff that plays in the chorus, that that was written kind of like as its own part, and then everything was assembled around that. That changed also. If you could hear the demo for that, you would realize it's almost completely different song. It almost sounded like a dance pop song, and now is sort of like a much darker, like much bigger song than it used to be. But those parts were the essential parts, and then everything kind of expanded on top of that.
I want to form like an a cappella like group for like Endearments. And we're like ba ba ba.
That's what we'll do. That's the next that's how we'll do the next show. Yeah, I'll just get everyone to come in and kind of and just like bop it.
Yeah. All of a sudden just throwing some Hanson in there.
Sure, I'm very excited for someone who has to sing like the slap bass parts, like yeah. Like, I'm gonna stop. That also should come from the singer.
You were talking about how it's dark, but it's dancey pop, and obviously Father of Wands EP. It's something where like I could dance to and cry at the same time.
Sure, yeah. I think that's why I love Muna, right? Like, to take it back to where we started, Muna is like these big, dancey, like incredible pop songs, and then they're so depressing. And I really love that all the songs and all the music that I love the most is sad music, right? And Silk Chiffon, their new like single is very like poppy positive, but them as a band, like their albums up until this point have all been real sad, but like also bops, right? And so I do like writing tunes that are bops, but that are also really sad. And I will not be stopping doing that anytime soon. That's how I've always written music. That's the stuff that I think I connect with the most. And so just, get ready for more sad bops from
All
me.
right. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
So you mentioned earlier how there's like a tarot card theme to your EP. So what's the future? What's your New Year's resolution for Endearments?
Sure. Well, finish a full length, I think that's the New Year's resolution. I've also, this is ambitious, but I decided to self-produce this one. So the last record was produced by Ariel Lowe, incredible producer. He does like Yoke Lore and Drinker and Plastic Picnic and like some really great bands. But and still a great friend of mine, and I've even been talking to him about sending some songs just to like listen to them and get opinions and stuff like that. But I've really made it my purpose to record the next one myself and to produce it myself, all on tape. So not using a laptop, right? Like not recording anything digitally. And I thought that this would be a lot easier than it actually is. It is incredible to me how much like something like Logic makes, like you have Logic on your computer, you've got so much that you need to make a record, right? Like even make demos for a record, whatever you need, Pro Tools, you're good to go. Like all of those plugins, when you don't have them anymore, has to be physical equipment to do the same things. So like parametric equalizers and de-essers and compressors and limiters and all of those things have to be like physical pieces of gear. And so over time it sort of started as this like lightly ambitious idea to record some music to tape, and has kind of like spiraled into this like big project of sort of assembling a small studio and then also producing a record with it. And I'm pretty far along on maybe like 1 or 2 songs, and I'm excited about how it's going. It gives it a far more retro feel. I feel like you're gonna recognize a bit more like New Ordery kind of feeling to it, and a bit more The Cure and like stuff like that from era of when sort of MIDI studios and stuff were far more popular. So we'll see. I'm hoping that you get that kind of like retro sound as a result. Talk to me again in 6 months. Maybe I'll have given up.
Awesome. I love how you're doing it all yourself, in an old school fashion way. And I think I heard or I read somewhere that The Weeknd, like his After Hours is super like synth heavy. And I think he used like actual retro keyboards from the 80s to create like that true essence sound from the 80s onto his album.
Sure. And actually there's a lot of that on Father of Wands. Like I have a bunch of old, I sometimes describe them as being untimely synths, stuff that hasn't come back into fashion as much, so you might not realize it. I think now more than maybe when I was in St. Maryland, where we were going on Craigslist and we were buying like old 80s keyboards for like $200, and like some of that stuff now is far more popular than it was in like 2015. But there's still some outliers, some interesting like maybe not sounds that are not in vogue yet. So I'm hoping that kind of comes through. I think that that's going to be part of what makes it feel kind of like a throwback, is that there's just a lot of parts that feel like they were written and played on something that is old.
And speaking of throwback, when I listen to Endearments, I'm like, if John Hughes, the filmmaker, was still alive today, making his coming of age, like teen angst movies, I feel like he would totally insert an Endearment song in one of his movies.
That'd be great for me. Get that sync money. I'm just kidding. But I would be honored if John Hughes wanted to put one of my songs in. I think that'd be really fun. You can get delicate in on one of those big emotional moments in a John Hughes film.
Yeah, we'll find his successor or something like that. And I think honestly, I should slide into Taylor Swift's DMs because I think she would approve this EP as well.
Oh, I appreciate that.
All right. Well, speaking of, I mentioned about John Hughes in movies. You mentioned, I think I did hear your interview on Local Bops and how you were talking about how like there's like a lot of records that make you cry. What's a movie that makes you cry?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a great question. What is the movie that I cried to most recently? Man, I'll tell you the movie that where I just could not where I just lost it was shoot, it's got Michael B. Jordan in it. Wow, I'm suddenly Fruitville Station. Have you seen Fruitville Station? Oh
Yes.
my God. I just sobbed my eyes out. I remember I went and saw that at Nighthawk Theater in New York, and everyone in the audience was just lost it. That is an incredible movie. That movie makes me cry. As far as like, there is there is. I don't really watch a lot of anime ever, but in the last year, I saw a movie called Your Name, which is like which is sort of like, it's a full length movie by a pretty famous director. I wish I could remember his name, and I'm not going to type it to look it up. But there, that movie made me sob as well. But also, it has an incredible soundtrack. There's a band called called Radwimps that does the soundtrack for this director's movies. So that one, and then I think Weathering with You is another one of his. Is more recent, and they both have these incredible, huge soundtracks. And it made me also realize like how susceptible to a good soundtrack and like hitting the right like musical beat matters to making a movie like make you cry, you know? Like when they build it up just the right way and then it opens up at that moment where it gets the most emotional, that'll make me sob.
All right, so I'm going to end our interview with a game. I know that you're a multi-instrumentalist and that you play bass. So you're going to guess who's this bassist. So basically, I cropped out their image and it's just their body and the bass. And so it's going to be multiple choice. It's going to be true or
Okay.
false.
Okay. I can
So,
do this.
okay. I believe in you, Kevin.
I'm
Okay.
ready.
So the first one's a male bassist. And here it is. So you're gonna
Okay, so
is
that's
this
definitely
I'm,
hold
I'm
on.
gonna give you I'm gonna give you multiple choice unless you want to
Sure,
guess
sure,
it.
sure.
Okay, so
I'm guessing it's the bassist from Guar, but I don't know his name, but go ahead.
that's actually one of the options. So either Beefcake the Mighty of Guar,
Sure.
Alessandro Venturea of Slipknot, or Gene Simmons of Kiss.
Oh shoot, it could also be Gene Simmons of Kiss, couldn't it? I'm gonna go with Guar, but also I think I might regret it if it's Gene Simmons from Kiss.
It is Gene Simmons of Kiss.
Oh, see, you know, when you put on pointy armor to play bass, it'll really throw you off.
That was the reason why I selected those three bands specifically. I was like, I
Well
can't
done.
like put like, oh, is this Roger Waters or Matt Bellamy? It's like, no, that'd be too obvious. Okay. The next one is a female bassist. I'm gonna put it up close. Sorry for the halo ring.
Okay.
Is this Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth, Blue to Tiger, or Darcy of Smashing Pumpkins?
Okay, so I know Blue to Tiger, she almost always plays that blue bass. So I don't think that it's her. And you said Darcy was the last choice.
Yeah, Darcy of Smashing Pumpkins or Kim Gordon of Sonic Youth.
Either, I mean, the hair looks like it could be blue, but I feel like that's the wrong bass. So I'm gonna say Kim Gordon on this one.
It's actually Blue to Tiger.
Oh my God! You know what? That's a tricky one because I feel like that's a different bass than I'm used to seeing her play.
I purposely found a different color bass because I'm like, if I select blue, it's super obvious. So I was
Sure,
like,
because yeah, she has with the turtle shell pick art, like yeah, great videos. She's an incredible.
Oh yeah,
musician.
I got to interview her on my podcast, so she's a phenomenal bassist. Nice. And let's see. Okay, okay. True or false? Is this Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Again, you're I feel like you're gonna play me here. Yes. Why wouldn't that be? I mean, he's not wearing like a skirt or anything, which I would 1000% I would know it was him. I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah, that's him.
I feel so bad for making this too hard. It's
you
actually
really...
it's Sting of the Police, and I found a shirtless photo of him.
Wow, this is fun. Okay, so now I understand the context of this game. You're gonna screw with me. All of these are trick questions.
You know what? You're not the only one that I've screwed over before, and I feel terrible afterwards. Okay, last one. Female bassist.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. This is from a movie character. So not like a real bassist, but okay. Is this Cassandra from Wayne's World or Valerie Brown from Josie and the Pussycats?
Cassandra from Wayne's World.
Woo! You got one right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for your time.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Have a really great holiday.